Let's talk about Spurs now. Up against Bournemouth, both fighting for very different things, I guess one would say, but Spurs still having a lot to prove this season as well, in this post Antonio Conte era as well. At home, you'd think they'd take care of business, but a 5-goal thriller at in North London, and Bournemouth, the ones coming away with the 3 points. Janusz, where did it all go wrong for Spurs?
Well, I mean, statistically, if you look at it, I mean, obviously, Spurs were the better team. But I'll tell you what, when I was changing my mind and how to approach this, although I said in the back of my mind, even if Spurs get a draw or get a win, which they were close to, right? Richarlison, who incredibly hasn't scored a Premier League goal for Spurs somehow, had that header, right? And, he misses the header from close, and then they go the other way, and of course the Cherries get the winner. But I said to myself, I watched the first 10-15 minutes, and again, it's that Spurs are timid, home or away. They still feel a lot more comfortable on the counter, and I'm thinking to myself, listen, this is Spurs, great team that has Harry Kane that scores goal left and right, with the exception of today. Perhaps that's what they lost. A human Son who showed signs of life, right? Now, 2 games, one against Brighton, one here where he scored a goal. He's had some chances as well. Even Perisic has woken up. I thought he had a pretty good game for himself as well. And I say to myself, if you want to be a big team, play like one. And that's what's missing to me with Spurs all the time, home or away. And I think it was maybe that mentality of Antonio Conte. On one hand, a little bit of a minimalist because the way he wants to play, and defensively he's comfortable on the counter. 3-5-2, doesn't really want to change that, or 3-4-3. He's gone. Stellini's still there, so you have to imagine as his assistant, they're playing in a similar way. But he showed a tweak today, right? Because he did change the formation last 20 minutes to 4-4-2. At least it looked that way. And Danjuma, who by the way was once I thought a great player, former Cherry, by the way, but at Villarreal, he was wanted by everybody. Liverpool wanted him, half the Premier League. Only, I think, his second appearance in the Premier League right now. And the first one was just a few minutes. Scores a goal, so that was positive. But I come back to it, the being timid, not wanting to play football, even though they're big club. And the ironic part about Spurs, Alexis, is that they're terrible defensively. They are. They don't have a one good defender. And I'm going to throw in a player that I like, another World Cup winner, right? Christian Romero, who hasn't played well since then. Dyer, for me, nothing special. Lenglet, too bad he got injured because I don't want to see that for any player, but nothing special. Dyer, I've mentioned. Davinson Sanchez comes in and it gets substituted, right? Because right away he almost made a mistake on one of the goals and got beaten. I believe for the second one, very very easily by Enciso. So they've conceded before this game was 44. That's now 47 goals. This is Antonio Conte's team that prides itself on defensive organization in general and good defending. So. I think that's the story of Spurs. But having said all that, look at that. Brighton are pushing. Look at Villa under Unai Emery. That's a story in itself. But they're still there, and they haven't been playing well in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, well, this is actually Bournemouth's first win ever away at Spurs. And just looking at the stats, everything you just said, Spurs want to play football. They're playing the football, 24 shots, 8 of them on target, whereas Bournemouth had 9 shots and 6 of them on target. But Bournemouth, again, just taking their chances, especially late in the game when Spurs were throwing everything they can at them. But Bournemouth held their nerve, Janusz. What impressed you about them today?
I just think that they play within themselves. A big, strong, defensive, good defensive team that have a couple players that have been playing extremely well when it matters, because obviously they've made changes as well in terms of manager and within the team. And if you look at somebody like Solanke, you look at Philip Billing, so strong in that, right? And you look at some of the substitutions and players coming in and making a difference. That's what it is. It's a little bit of a desperation. But I think when I watch Bournemouth, because I really don't know where it's coming from. other than that, just that discipline and belief. Because I think, Bournemouth was one of those teams that's been kind of up and down, but they've never been, I don't remember a time where I'd say for long that they're dropping off. You always thought that, and I think the opponents think that they just don't have enough. And quietly, because there's so many teams involved, right? I mean, think about it, and that's a bonus for Bournemouth, although maybe not to others. But we're talking, we've been talking for how many, teams from 11, 12 down, not that long ago, that are fighting for their survival. So there's a lot of teams. Normally you have 4 or 5, maybe at most, involved. So you really know when to focus on teams. Where with Bournemouth, it's just another game because everybody's playing desperate. But I don't see that in Bournemouth. I don't see desperation or a feeling that they're not good enough. And I could say that about a couple of teams where deep down, I think they may know that they're not good enough.
All right. Well, we'll wrap that up there for the Spurs chat against Bournemouth, but still want to talk about Spurs. But in terms of the top four, Janusz, because they are just outside the top four, 3 points behind Newcastle and Manchester United. Man United still have a game to play. They'll be in action tomorrow against Forest, who are also fighting, for their lives too. Janusz, when it comes to the top four, how do you see this mapping out? Because what we saw today from Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins on an absolute moment bossing that game against a Newcastle that has been increasingly impressive as well. They looked pretty much comfortable, more comfortable than Manchester United in that top four. But Villa now making a late run against I suppose, people's expectations. Where do you see Villa going? Because they really are doing something special under Unai Emery, who we respect so much.
Yeah, I don't have the table in front of me in terms of games in hand. But, today when I was watching Villa against Newcastle, remember, those were two teams that were in incredible form. I mean, Villa was coming in to this game, 5 straight wins. Aston Villa with 4, they got 5, which I think is the first time they've achieved that in 25 years. So two teams like that. And just as I was singing praises of Newcastle, remember, against United, I think you remember that game, how impressive they were. It just goes to show that even if you're on an incredible streak, 4 or 5 or 6 games, it doesn't matter. You lose one game and all of a sudden you worry. I mean, Manchester United, just a month ago, we weren't worried about that. Newcastle had a soft spell. They started playing well, won 5 straight, as I've mentioned, 1 loss. And look at that. It even keeps Spurs in it. So with Villa, 5 games and a win, I mean, they'd have to run the table, I think, for them to get up there. I mean, it's possible if everybody keeps losing in front of them, but unlikely. Almost, I think Brighton has a better chance in that. But those two teams will be in a fight because one loss, it seems like more than 3 points because it's so tight up there. And that's why I worry. Manchester United now, I mean, as you know, look at the injuries that they have. So, I mean, you have to worry about them. And, they play against Sevilla last night, dominated the game, could have won it 4 or 5, ended up drawing, losing key players like Lisandro Martinez on top of Rashford. And now they're going to be thinking, my goodness, what happens when we go away to Sevilla? And yes, we have Forest, but what if? Because there's certainly certain players that are going to have to step up. So ultimately, to answer your question, I have had big doubts about Spurs, and nothing changes obviously today. I still think they're going to be outside looking in. I still believe that Newcastle and Manchester United will stay in the top 4. If they falter, I honestly see a Brighton or maybe Villa coming in before I see Spurs, because I think this is a devastating loss. I can only imagine how that feels in the 95th minute when you felt, you draw late, you have 1 goal disallowed, rightly so, because there was an offside, and then you have Richarlison with a header from 5 yards out, pretty free, where he misses the target, and you lose in the 95th minute. I think the repercussions of that are massive.
Well, actually, here's an interesting stat for you too. Only Arsenal and Manchester City, the league leaders, have scored more Premier League points than Aston Villa have since Unai Emery took over last November. I mean, they have just gone straight up. This is a Manchester City who, by the way, are already 2-0 up on Leicester City. Erling Haaland and John Stones. Shock. Man City, this could be an absolute goal fest as well, as we've seen so far. But as I mentioned, amazing stat there. Janusz, what's the one thing, I suppose, under Emery or about Unai Emery at Aston Villa that's kind of made you go, wow, he's onto
Well,
something here?
good managers make a difference, right? And
Massively.
you know, we've talked about Chelsea, we've talked about the issues that Spurs have. Look, he came in, recognized what I think everybody knew, right? And the massive mistake that Steven Gerrard has made because maybe of his inexperience or maybe he just didn't know. Who knows? But I think we all felt that Ali Watkins was a central player, right? That he
Yeah.
needed to play a striker. Remember, under Gerrard, that system was with the front three. I think he was putting Ings and everybody else in there, but Ali Watkins. So I think the change to that 4-4-2 has made a massive difference. Obviously, in terms of attack, they've scored, I believe, in every game since Unai Emery has been involved. Defensively, you're seeing the same that we saw under Dean Smith. Remember when he first started in that first year where Emi Martinez, I think, led the league in clean sheets. I don't know what it was, 14 or 15 on the season. I think Mings and Konsa were incredible. Matty Cash was playing on the right-hand side in the back four, and Matt Target, if I remember correctly, was on the left-hand side. They were the best back five. Of course, we have to include the goalkeeper in it because Emi was so good. They were the best in the league. And then all of a sudden Dean Smith started to make changes. Steven Gerrard made changes as well. I think Dean Smith went to three in the back. God only knows why he did that, since he was so successful with that. And the rest is history. Unai Emery has obviously greatly experienced in Europe, in Spain. Even though it didn't work out for him at Arsenal, that gave him a great experience of maybe looking back or looking towards himself, saying, okay, maybe that's where I made a mistake. This is what Premier League is all about. Next time I get a chance, I'm going to make it differently. So I think that's, fair play to Unai Emery. I love those stories. I was very critical, by the way, of Unai Emery. I'm no saint. If you go back, somebody probably has receipts on me from that time at Arsenal. But, I love to see that story. I love to admit that maybe I was wrong. And I should have known, because Unai Emery has proven over the years that he's a very, very good manager.
Yes, he has indeed. Love me some Unai Emery, man. All right, well, that's it for us right now. Janusz, I know you have to shoot off and watch this Manchester City matchup against Leicester City. Oh, goodness me. Let's hope it doesn't end in absolute despair for Leicester.
Oh, Dean Smith, I mentioned him, right? So
that's exactly. It's a tough challenge to go up against Manchester City, and the goals are already pouring in. So we'll let you go to watch that. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to join us again tomorrow. We'll be live after another big one. As we said, there's battles going on at all ends of the table. Manchester United trying to stay in that top four, especially with all of those that are looking for that top four spot now that we just discussed, up against Nottingham Forest, who are fighting for their lives currently in the relegation zone. But I think that result, that loss for Everton, probably would have helped them a bit. So
Alexis, you may have to suit up for United tomorrow.
I might have to. I'm probably going to get my shin pads on or something and try to do anything today in a centre-back pairing. So thanks so much, Janusz. Thanks to everyone for watching. I will see you guys again tomorrow after United Forest. Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.